Until late this afternoon, I had no idea James Thurber had ever written about science fiction or interplanetary travel. Yet there it is in a 1939 issue of the New Yorker magazine, obviously written in the aftermath of and frequently referencing the infamous Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast from the year before, which tens of thousands of radio listeners thought was a real newscast about an invasion of New Jersey by Martians. I'm reading from Michael J. Rosen's Thurber collection, People Have More Fun Than Anybody, and for time, I'm picking this up about 4 paragraphs in. Suffice to say, Thurber's reaction to Welles' War of the Worlds is almost unique. With his view of man, he was certain that what he called the inner planets, Mercury, Mars, and Venus, had much more to worry about from us invading them than we did from them invading New Jersey. Look out for the Warelians, by James Thurber. They are, or at least they think they are, in desperate and imminent danger of an invasion by Warel. Warel is my kind of idea for the kind of name the other terrestrial planets must have for Earth. It is made up of the words war and cruel, and for the purposes of this study, or any other purpose, it is a much better term for our planet than the one we use. 2 of the imperiled planets, Mars and Venus, have a general similarity to Earth, which has caused astronomers to assume that they may be inhabited. Mercury is rather similar to Earth, too, but I guess we can leave her out of this. Mercury presents always only one hemisphere to the sun, and if there were any people on that burning side, they would be too miserable to devise any deviltry or to be afraid of anything except the sun. Any beings who might exist on the hemisphere that is constantly turned away from the sun would be 237 times colder than the Eskimos, and nobody could be that cold and get away with it. I think we can safely conclude, then, that there isn't anybody at all on Mercury, either for us to worry about or to be worried about us. Let us fix our telescope on Mars and Venus. Because of certain physical phenomena, Mars and Venus are not nearly so well adapted as we are to the development of that higher intelligence, which has made the Earth creatures, or Warelians, what they are today. The atmosphere on Venus is much too thick, and that on Mars far too rarefied to produce the intelligent human being as we know him. The inhabitants of Venus live in a kind of overcharged aqueous fog and are slow of thought and sluggish of movement. This kind of atmosphere fosters the development of a rather stupid, kindly people who do not go in for weapons of war other than the club and the brickbat. It is extremely unlikely that the Venusians possess anything made of steel or want to possess anything made of steel. The heaviness of the atmosphere, the scarcity of oxygen, and the prevalence of carbon dioxide make Venus a dreamy kind of planet with no genius at all in the arts of hellishness. We can put Venus down as a friendly planet. Friendly but frightened. Mars, as I have said, has a thin atmosphere, and you know what that does to you. The Martians can't hear very well. They're constantly swallowing, and they're always slightly dizzy. A great many of them find it difficult to keep anything on their stomachs. The Martians are afflicted with torpor and indecision in certain seasons, and a vague melancholy in all seasons. I think we may assume that in implements of warfare they have not gone beyond the slingshot era, and that they have no desire to. Martians are canal workers, and there's so many millions of miles of canals on Mars that the Martians have no time for anything else, even if they could think of anything else. They get up and work on the canals, and they go to bed and get up and work on the canals again. Like the Venusians, they have a great deal of carbon dioxide, but a great deal of carbon dioxide does not get a planet anywhere. My researches have established the probability that Mars also has hornblende and gneiss, but I can find no traces of steel, oil, warships, battle planes, speakers, platforms, national flags, or anything else. Martians may be a trifle more active than Venusians, but they are not warlike, they are sad, and they want to be left alone. The inhabitants of both these planets put together would not have the energy or spirit to invade Halley's Comet, even if it came to a stop and cooled off. They have not yet developed a higher intelligence. If we fix the intelligence of the Warelians at 1, and after what happened on Earth last October with the Orson Welles broadcast, that is putting it high, the intelligence of the Martians and the Venusians may be fairly represented by the symbol -17. Now, the more intelligent you are in a planetary sense, the less scared you're going to be in an interplanetary sense. Let us take a peek at the intelligence quotient of the Warelian, as indicated by his fear level. This will give us some idea of how dumb and how frightened Mars and Venus must be. None of the hundreds of thousands of Warelians who were planet-struck on that great day last October were smart enough to realize that even when Mars is closest to us, 35 million miles, it would take Martian planes traveling at 200 miles per hour 20 years to reach New Jersey. I'm leaving out the problem of stocking the planes with food and fuel, even though this is an important consideration, because of the fact that the Martians probably have no fuel. A Martian warrior who was 32 years old when he set out to invade Earth would be in his 50s when he landed, even if everything went all right during the trip. A normal amount of engine trouble would hold him up till he was in his 60s. It doesn't require any more brain than a resident of Neptune has to figure out the unsurmountable rigors of the trip. A man who spent 2 decades hurtling through space would be airsick and space drunk and very likely a pitiable sight to behold on account of speed bends, comet shock, stratosphere burn, sky eye, and star deafness. A child on Jupiter would know that an aging Martian arriving cross and sick after a trying 20-year trip would not be in any shape to go around killing Americans. Now, if we Warelians are too ignorant to have figured out the impossibility of an invasion from Mars, how much less likely is it that the Martians have figured out the impossibility of an invasion from Earth? Well, about 17 times less likely, we find in referring back to the Martian intelligence symbol. Thus, since intelligence and fear move in identical orbits, the Martians are 17 times as scared as we are. They think Earth is only a few thousand miles away. A Martian at his best can barely put 2 and 2 together, and he would never been able to comprehend a figure as large as 35 million. All a Martian really knows about us is that there we are in the skies, looking near and ominous at all times, and very near and very ominous in August and September of certain years. The Martians were intensely frightened by the close approach of Warel in 1924, 1909, 1892, and 1877. In 1877, millions of them gathered in their primitive caves and prayed their primitive prayers. Hundreds of thousands of them killed themselves, and many others went crazy or fled into the woods of Syrtis Major. I wish I could let the Martians know that there is really no danger, that we are never going to drop down on them through space. Only one little thought cheers me up when I think about the Martians and how scared they are of we in Warel. Martians haven't got a strong enough intelligence or a vivid enough imagination to picture what the little men of Earth are really like. That's why, with all their melancholy and all their dizziness and all their tedious work on the canals, they are happier people than we are. We know exactly how horrible and terrifying the little men of Earth actually are. It isn't a pleasant thing to know. Look out for the Warelians by James Thurber. That's Countdown. I'm Keith Olbermann. Have a good weekend, good night, and good luck.